how many people were killed in the Civil War. We've had 1.2 million soldiers killed in all of our wars, but in the Civil War we had 600,000, and more than half of them were unknown. So they gave their lives and their parents or brothers and sisters, you know, where they were buried. So the Civil War, we lost more than half our people in the Civil War. It's a terrible war. 2% of our population lost in the Civil War. So that Civil War banned our society. It really changed. Only 30 million people in the United States at that time. So a big percentage was lost at that time. Now we're very lucky to have a gentleman who wrote this book here, Lady with the Shamrock, and we have it on sale in the bookstore. If you want to get more in depth about what he says, we're going to let him talk, and he has a friend named Mr. Holycross that's going to ask him the questions, and we've got a video or some slides. If you can't see, we'll pull that garage door down a little bit, Ricky, so they can see. And then we'll have question and answers, so write your questions down so you can remember them. So we'll get started now. And you introduce him, if you don't mind, please.
Thank you. Our guest today is Mr. Donald Ray Cobb, World War II veteran. And so first of all, everyone, good morning. Thanks for coming. Good to see you here. And before we start, can I ask you please to silent or shut off your phones so that it won't be disturbing to the people around you? Appreciate it. Okay, we'll get started here. Don, can you tell us about your early years growing up?
It's kind of tough following such good music. Anyway, yes, can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
I was born in Evansville, April 1925, and I guess my parents were on pins and needles because 3 weeks later we all moved to Detroit, Michigan. And so my dad worked in the auto company, lined the marble roofs, and he smoked, so I guess he got around somebody with TV, so he developed that. And it was a life sentence, a death sentence back then. And on my 5th birthday, I remember riding the train back to Kentucky, to around Hanson, Kentucky, where the parents lived on the farm. And in September, my dad passed away. So then we moved over to McLean County, 6 miles out of California, where my mother's parents had a 35-acre farm. And the next year, her father died, so that's with no grown men around. So they had a horse and buggy, so they sold the horse, so we had no transportation. So anyway, in the early stages of the Great Depression, so my mother walked the 6 miles to Calhoun and worked at a sewing place, and then walked home and cooked supper, and then the rest of the garden, and somebody else took care of the farm in the land. But I went to a one-room schoolhouse until the 7th grade. We had no school bus until I reached the 7th grade. My mother didn't get to go to high school, so I didn't know if I would either. But one day we rode a horse. We didn't have a horse. But then they started the school bus when I reached the 7th grade, so they let my mother ride it. And then somebody else wanted to ride it, so they kicked her off. So then her sister in Detroit wrote her a bicycle, so she moved that. But she had to be 97 years old, so she proved the hard work of a kid. So anyway, I graduated from high school in 1942, and I decided that my aunt lived in Detroit, so I would go up there, and I had graduated just 2 days past my 17th birthday, So I had almost a year before they could draft me. I knew I was going to leave the service sooner or later, but I wanted to make a little money first. So I went to Detroit and stayed with my aunt. And, you know,
That was in Detroit.
in Detroit.
Okay.
So anyway, first thing I did was I got a job with Coca-Cola bottling company, making just a little money, and I took a couple of mechanical drawing courses through sponsored by Wayne State University. Then I got a job with Fisher by the Division of General Motors, taking care of the blueprint files for the tooling division of the B-29 bomber. So that's what I was doing while I was 17 years old.
Okay. Now, Don, why don't you tell us a little bit about when you were inducted into the service, what training you had?
All right. I didn't want to be in the Army, so I almost joined the Navy Air Force when I decided to quit. And when I went down to be inducted, everything I could hear in front of me was Army, Army, Army. And they got to me, they said, Army, Navy, and Marines. I said, Navy? But anyway, that's what I did. And I was, by June, I was at Great Lakes Navy Training Station. And I spent 7 weeks there. And I had started taking a course of journalism and correspondence. So I dropped that. But anyway, I guess I told somebody, so they had me interview a couple of guys. And they write a story about them. And one of them were printers, but they changed quite a bit for the printers. But anyway.
Okay. Now, March 17, 1944.
Well, before that, I went to Navy radio school at the University of Chicago. I spent 5 months there.
How close can I get here so that I'm not in your shot?
I was transferred to Diamond Island in Casco Bay, Maine, and to learn to operate high-frequency direct confined equipment and to understand the code that the German submarines set. They put some extra dashes there so you could really tell that it was the Germans that were transmitting. So I spent a month there. Then I went aboard the USS Roper, D-603. I was thinking it was a boat, Irish named ship that I boarded on St. Patrick's Day. And it was in the Brooklyn Navy Yard being rebuilt because this was in March, in October the year before. It had been in a convoy, and a U.S. Army had been in another convoy and had developed engine problems, so it was returning to New York. They were about 200 miles off New York. So the Mercury picked up on radar that there was a blip. Radar wasn't as good back then, so they thought they might be a submarine. So they were ordered to go check it out. So the U.S. Army only had sonar that could pick up the sound of the propeller, and they thought that Mercury was a submarine. So in the maneuvering, the U.S. Army turned to make the smallest target they could, which would be head on toward the ship. So they ran right through the middle of the Mercury. And the battle park sank with, they lost 35 men. And it's kind of an irony that a few of the men lost were named Burton. So, I was, several of the men that were on the ship then were still on the Bible, board. And I heard the stories. And one of the men that was a yeoman, he was in the bow section when it was cut to two, and it rolled on its side, and he was down in the water in the bow section, and he started swimming toward the hatch. And somebody on the other side closed it and spun the wheel, which they were supposed to do. So then they had to find someplace else. So anyway, somebody reached down and grabbed him and pulled it out. And he had to jump in the water and found a keg to float on. And then the USS Evansville guys to pick up survivors. And so he was, somebody in the raft grabbed his hand and ended up over by the ship. But he had to hold on to the oil rope to be pulled up, and some of the people slipped off, couldn't hold on to it. So he said he grabbed the rope and ended up holding on to the knot, or just above the knot, and was pulled up so he was okay.
How comfortable would you feel about being in the Navy and getting on a ship to go across the ocean that was just cut in half or something? Okay, on board the ship, Don, how many men were usually about on board the ship?
The count was somewhere, I've seen 265 and 275, so it's somewhere in between there. It might vary anyway. I don't know what to do. But the ship was, the berth was 348 feet long and I think 40 feet wide.
Okay. Now, when did you head over to Europe for D-Day?
The early part of May, we headed over by ourselves. We could go faster without a problem. But we went back and forth between Belfast, North Ireland, and Plymouth and went to England for a while. And of course, I didn't know what we were doing while we were back and forth, but maybe it was partly to confuse the German. I don't know, and then partly, then we went up into Scotland, some of the first up in there, this is a fine.
Okay. Now, June the 6th, 1944, Operation Neptune. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. Operation Overlord was the overall operation name. The Navy's part of it was Operation Neptune. So we left on June the 5th. We left around Belfast, then around the southern end of England. And it was a nice day when we started out. And I saw one of these, they call them Phoenix. They were like big concrete blocks that were pulled by a tug. I saw one of those going across. And that's what they tied together to make the ports of all their and all these. And so we timed it so as we got closer, first thing we did was to escort some minesweepers that were clearing out some of the mines. And then we timed it to be right in at 5:30 in the morning on D-Day. And then everybody started firing, and that was the beginning of it. So we were there for 16 days. And, of course, the first day was the worst.
Okay, so here we have, this is a map of Neptune for the invasion.
Down there, where it says the salt area, the vessel up there, Sherbrooke on the corner. And the British beaches for 3 of them over there this way, and then we had Omaha and Utah Beach next to that. I think that's written on
And you was involved in a lot of the mine sweeping there, weren't you? To clear that path?
We were part of the time bombarding and part of the time screening for the bigger ships. And we were ordered one time to stand out 2,000 yards from the Texas to intercept any torpedoes that might come in. We were extended. But we did a lot of just patrolling for German E-boats and U-boats like PT boats. And they caused a lot of damage to several of our ships. The other problem we had was with glide bombs. I know USS Meredith was sunk by a glide bomb. And
Okay. Don, the next picture here is a picture of the Higgins boat.
Yeah,
Can you explain that?
yeah, that's what a lot of the troops were ashore from the big ships on the Higgins boat. And this is a well-known picture. I'm sure you've seen it somewhere before. But I made several trips on the Queen Mary too. And we're on stage at 10 o'clock in the morning, talking about wartime. And one time I was on there with the Coast Guardsman. He had been on one of these Higgins boats. His job was to roll the ramp. And he said he got there and he could hear the machine gun bullets hitting the ramp. They were firing about 1,200 rounds a minute. And he said he knew as soon as he dropped the ramp, several of the men were going to be killed. So he froze. And the coxswain said, drop the ramp. Well, he added a couple of those in there. But so he finally dropped it. He said several of them got killed. So this man could not talk about his wartime experiences, and so he took the trip over with British Generations Foundation.
And what were the boats made from?
They were
Plywood boats.
yeah, they were wood.
Okay, let's go on to the next one here. Operation Dragoon, invasion of southern France.
That's not as well known, but Operation Dragoon and the observation of southern France, that was August 15, 1944. And that was planned to happen actually sooner than that. But Russia insisted that the Allies get on with the invasion of southern France to take some of the pressure off of them. They were being invaded, of course, by the Germans. And we did not get close to shore, though, on that one. We were 2 miles offshore escorting what they call escort aircraft carriers. They were basically a motion ship with a deck lid on it. They were quite a bit smaller than a regular aircraft carrier. I don't know how the men landed and took off on those. except they flew a lot slower than they do now. But that's what that was.
Okay, the next slide, this is a picture from the shore looking at the ships gathered outside for this invasion of southern France.
Yeah.
Look at all the ships.
I don't think it had as many there, of course, as it did in London.
Okay, let's go on to the next slide. And Don, can you tell the people about the magic carpet and the King of Saudi Arabia?
Well, to lead up to that, in February 1945, we were sent to over close to the Straits of Gibraltar. And there were other destroyers sent to different points. And the USS Quincy was going over with President Roosevelt aboard. So when we got to our area, we escorted him over to the island of Malta. And from there, he flew on to the Yalta Conference. Then he flew back. And after we flew back, and one other destroyer of us escorted him through the Suez Canal to Great Lake, Egypt. And we were in the lead, so we were the first destroyer since World War I to touch the Suez Canal. But anyway, when we got down there, we were ordered to go down to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and picked up the king and 8 of his people. Well, we got down there, and the king wanted to bring his harem, and several other people, and they talked him out of the harem because he told them there was no place to have privacy. And the guards came out with 80 sheep on them. He wanted to feed all of us. And so they talked him down to 6 sheep. And they built a pen on the fantail, and that's where they would butcher the sheep and hang them up and put them on a small charcoal grill. And they told me that we were on a certain diet and we couldn't eat that kind of meat. So that's how they're talking about that. So they ended up, instead of picking up 8 people, we had the king and 48 people. That was astrologers, I don't know what all. Took 2 of his sons, Mansour and Abdullah. And they had movies one night, and they had two movies, one for our people and one for the Arabs. But turned out that the 2 sons, or at least one of them, I think it was Mansour, was over watching the American movies. So he didn't go along with it. But we had them on board for a couple of nights going back up through the Suez Canal. And we transferred them over to the Quincy to meet with President Roosevelt. And the king called everybody together before they left our ship. And I happened to be on watch, so I did. It wasn't there. But he gave, and they got permission from President Roosevelt so they could accept this. He gave the officers, well, they had a commodore and a captain, and he gave them one of his robes, which was a turban, which was gold trim and everything. And he gave the officers a Swiss wristwatches. He gave the chief petty officers, I think, the equivalent of $60, and he gave the rest of us $40 apiece. But the king gave him a C-47 plane, and that started their Air Force. That started in fact, an American pilot went over and spent 2 years helping them get started. But
this is a picture of the king and President Roosevelt, of which this was a secret meeting. That was not in the news.
that's the Murphy pulling alongside the Clinton.
Okay, let's go on here to the next slide. And this was Return to Normandy.
Yeah, this was in 2016. We were there for D-Day, and of course that's we went to the second one. That was one of my ship dates. So and everybody you see there, I'm the only one still left.
Okay, let's go on to the next slide.
Oh, let me say one thing.
Okay.
This was the 82nd and 101st Airborne over in the next field. They call it the 1,000-man parachute drop. They kept flying over and dropping parachutes. And so we were up there by ourselves. There were some bleachers back this way, and quite a few people, but we were out there by ourselves in the middle of the field.
Now, by the way, I don't know if you knew that, but Don is 98 years old and still goes to play golf, walks 9 holes all the time. Now, his roommate that goes with him on the Queen Mary over to Normandy is 103.
I went and played golf in June, this last year. He and I played golf with some Vietnam veterans at Omaha Beach Golf Course.
Okay, let's go on to the next slide.
Point be hot. This man in the middle was a ranger. He was at Buffalo, but he was not one of the men that had to climb the ladder, where the Germans were dropping grenades down on him. But he was there the second day and fought with them the rest of the way. But the other thing, when we were on the ship, we got close to Point de Hope. In fact, they fired a couple of rounds into Point de Hope. And the captain said, "Stop firing, we got too close to it." And so one of our radio men was worried to see these men climbing the ladders, and we were so close he didn't need binoculars, so he could see them climbing. And he said that he saw them trying to climb and the Germans dropping grenades. He said he cried. So,
Okay, let's go on to the next slide. And it's them preparing to get on a helicopter to fly from Paris to Normandy.
yeah, name is Greg Boucher, and that's his son, second from left, and his daughter. And they met us in, they were from Omaha. That's one of the donors to the British Liberation Foundation. So they met us in Paris, and then we went to Normandy, so we flew on the helicopter from Paris to Normandy, and then flew around looking at over the beaches a little bit.
Okay.
The third one from the left there, that's Steve Cobb, who is now 103 years old. His parents were both from Ukraine.
Where you going?
Yeah.
Okay. And here, this is the U.S. Embassy in Paris. That's President Trump.
In 2017, we were invited to go visit with Steve Ellicott, and that's Joe Riley was a character. We were invited to be there with the president, and I had to drive to Louisville because they couldn't get us direct flight out of Evansville. And so I was waiting in the Louisville airport for the plane to come from Chicago. And the weather was bad, so it didn't get there in time. So I had to just drive back home and drive back the next day. So I missed being there with President Trump for this at the embassy. But he read my name at least. But I got there the next day for the Steel Day Parade.
Okay, here we are. This is them in Paris, and then the celebration.
That's something else. Let me,
Yeah. Can we go back?
there's a next one, there's a picture later on of the Steel Day Parade. Well, anyway, I'll get to that later. Let's go ahead with this. This was at the Bristol Hotel in Paris, and a group met us there and stayed with us the rest of the way. And they were called the Young Entrepreneurs, and they were all in their 60s. They still call themselves the Young Entrepreneurs. But anyway, Steve and I roomed together there, and this hotel was close to the president's home, and we could see the Israeli embassy with the guards standing out there beside the machine gun. But this, I saw a sign on the door of the room we were staying in. It said the price normally over 1,700 euros. So it was a pretty expensive hotel. But I was told the Young Entrepreneurs paid for our room. So that was nice. And this was a ceremony we went to in the afternoon. And you see the bottom of the room, not where they had a teddy. And some of the veterans went up, and I didn't go up. But the Young Entrepreneurs were there with us too. And before that, we had a short ceremony under the tower.
Eiffel Tower.
Eiffel Tower. And I could look straight up through it, and it was kind of interesting. See all that steel work up through there.
Okay. We're going on to the next slide. John, why don't you tell them about that gentleman that bought your dinner and his home?
This man is a count, the wealthiest man in France. And after originally they in 2017, after the Steel Day Parade, he invited us over to his either his house or his club right next to the embassy complex, and for drinks and all that. And so this time we were again at the Steel Day Parade in 2022, and he invited us over to his private club for lunch, and we were out and sat out in the back. Beautiful landscape garden area. And then we got back to Normandy, and he invited us to have lunch at his castle. This was his castle.
Okay, now, we have a picture of Dawn with other individuals here, and Dawn, I'm going to let you describe them here.
Well, that man on the left end, I guess he's probably over there with us, President Macron of France, and I'm next to him. And then so I paratrooper, and this is Steve Cobb. This was in 2017, so Steve was, I guess, 98 at the time. And this was Major Andre, I don't know his last name, but he was kind of, I think, like special forces or something like that. But he actually came to the wrestling club we were meeting and brought his daughter one time. He was a really nice guy. But anyway, we were at this parade. President Trump called it the best parade he ever saw, and I would say the same thing. Best parade I ever saw. And it lasted about 50 minutes. And, but after the parade was over, we walked over next to the side street, thought maybe President Trump would come down that way. But he didn't, but instead, Bridget, First Lady of France, walked over and shaking hands, and she got down to us. And she said, "Does my husband know you're here?" And we said, "No, I don't think so." And she said, "I'll go get him." So she walked right up there, and just a short time later, he was there, came down there, and shook hands. And, they had photographers out in the street, so I said, "How about a picture?" So I had just flown in 10 minutes before the parade, before we went over the parade, and stood there for 50 minutes. I was completely worn out. So without thinking this as President of France, I threw my arm up. Like you do, you know, when you take a picture. So then he threw his arm up around my back, so my old buddies know we're standing there getting that picture. He was fun, though.
Don, could you share just a couple of sentences about what you was telling me about the children of France at the education of World War II?
Yeah, the French make sure that their children never forget about World War II and about us helping them. And so when we go to Normandy, we're like rock stars. And
Rightfully so.
and we went to an elementary school. In fact, we twice we were at elementary school. And the kids know all about World War II, and they ask good questions. We're really up on it. So that's what the purpose of the Greatest Generations Foundation, which was started by Timothy Davis, who's from Australia, has quite an accent, and he's now American. But his purpose in the first place was to take veterans back to where they fought their battle, to help them cope with the PTSD and so forth. Some of it were not able to talk about their wartime experiences until they went back. Some of them back to Vietnam, and were then able to open up and talk about it. And also as part of the education, which I guess is mostly now a lot of it is educational. I made 4 trips on the Queen Mary 2. And on the Queen Mary 2, at 10 o'clock in the morning, a typical day, 10 o'clock in the morning, we're on stage in the theater. About two of us sometimes three, sometimes one, depending. Steve and I would walk the D-Day veterans are usually all together. And so we have a moderator, which is usually Jeremy Hubbard, who is a TV anchor at Fox Station in Denver, and was used to be with ABC. He came to Afghanistan and places. Was on Good Morning America, and is really very knowledgeable. And he's a moderator. And then after that, we go to lunch at the Royal Court buffet, really a good buffet. Then we on our own till about 5 o'clock. Then we meet at the Golden Lion Club, so we be together to go to dinner. Then at 6 o'clock we go to the beautiful Britannia restaurant, which is 2 decks high at full length of the ship, and just a really beautiful place. And they have 5-course dinner. Usually have 2 different choices.
Don, let's go on here if we can, okay?
Okay.
This next slide I'm going to show you, if you'll look at Don's coat, on the right side he has this medal that he was presented. And this was here in Evansville. This was aboard the LSD 325. Don was presented this board, which I'm going to let him explain, and there was Major Rankin.
That's the Consul General from Chicago, Consul General of France. I think it was pronounced WWII. And that's his medal. And it was started, the first one was from Napoleon, and it has to be okayed by the President of France. And it's the highest military award that France will give to a non-citizen. So I'm proud to have it. So the LSD had been to Normandy also, and we had been given to Greece. So we had representatives there from Canada, the Netherlands, England, Greece, of course from France. And that was very interesting. The Netherlands.
Okay. That kind of concludes that portion. Now let me ask in the audience, is there anyone that has any questions that they would like to ask of Don?
Yes, I will pass the microphone around. This young lady has one here. We'd like to have you state your name and then speak into the microphone.
Mine is just a comment. My name is Ashley Cobb. My mother, Irene Blessing, was a World War II Army First Corps veteran. She was actually stationed in England during D-Day, and the nurses would hear planes go over all the time. And she said the day of D-Day, the planes were constant, and she said they knew something was going on, but they did not know what. And I'm also going to add her uniform. We donated her uniform to the museum here, and it is hanging up with the other veterans' uniforms.
My brother was in the Army Air Corps in England at the time I was at Normandy. And speaking of nurses, the last couple of trips I've been on the freeway too, we've had some armed nurses, a couple of them, and had one woman that was in the line out of Switzerland. She was married.
John? we open the door over there, let it smell, go over here, turn those fans on, so you don't go to sleep. 3 questions for you, and we wait for questions out here. Number 1, Don talked about these concrete things they were pulling over from England, and he saw these concrete things. They're like big silos, and they brought them over and made a harbor. And it only lasted a month and a half. We had the worst storm ever, but they sunk these silos, great big things they took over the Buffalo. They sunk them all near where the D-Day beach was, and it used as a harbor because the sea is so mean. But it did help transport people and goods. You had tons of goods over. Tell us what those concrete things look like. They're about 10 feet out of the water. When they got where they fill them with water, they're sinking. Can you tell us what they look like?
It looks to me like this big square concrete rock, and this is big.
I didn't know what those were. Nick was all worried about those things. He didn't know what they were. The second thing, why don't you tell us about D-Day itself? My dad was in the Battle of Okinawa, and that was actually a bigger invasion of D-Day. And I remember watching the fires and he said, look at that sky. And you look at that sky, he says, in Okinawa, it was like that at times 10, and it didn't stop for 3 days. Can you tell us what the skies look like to you in Normandy?
Pretty dark. The water was choppy, rough. I remember going over, I was out on the deck because I was assigned to, I was a radio man in the general quarters. I was assigned to another 4 or 5 inch gun to help pass ammunition up. And because we couldn't use all the radio men at one time, and the general quarters, everybody had to be doing something. So that's where they put me. And so I was out on the deck, and it was June, but I had on just about everything I had in my locker, including my pea coat. And that gas air was still going right through it. I was shivering. It was cold. It might have been part of the thing that I wanted to have to do. But I was shivering.
There's conflicting weather reports. 4 or 5 different weathermen tried to predict that weather on June 6th. The English actually predicted better than the United States, but the weather on the 5th, they couldn't go in. I think they were supposed to go on the 5th, they went on the 6th. And they would have gone in the high tide, it'd be 2 weeks later or something later. The weather would have been bad then. So we were very, very lucky that the English predicted that weather. Can you tell us how bad the weather was the day before? You're rolling around that ship, did you have to get seasick?
No, I was, it had been pretty rough before I got seasick. I got thrown on the rock and I didn't remind me. Anyway, the water on the 5th, before we got boats, I thought we would be too bad. But as closer we got the worse it got.
The last question I had is, you've floated around for 60 days, it sounds like from June 6th all the way, I guess whatever they will be, but how did you get supplies, and how easy was it to get gas, how was it to get food, and how was it to get more ammunition? What ship would come close to you, and how did they ever bump you or bump into each other? It's very difficult to go on the sea, but you had to get gas and everything else. Can you tell us about that transition there?
I don't think, part of the time we were sitting still, so I don't think we had to refuel. I think we had enough, but another thing that we did, on the 23rd, we went back to Portland, England. And on the 25th, we, along with another destroyer, escorted 3 battleships to Texas, Nevada, and Arkansas, and some cruisers over to Cherbourg, because since we lost the port, our launches, they needed Cherbourg as a port. So we split into 2 groups. We headed to Nevada, and the Texas, we went west, and the Texas and Arkansas went the other way. And the battleship started bombarding the fort. And we were letting smoke because we were on the battle. Then they gave us a target, and we fired a couple of rounds, and must have got too close to somebody or something, because the war, and we were told there were 280 millimeter picked us as a target. So for 50 minutes, and I got a copy of the ship log, and that's what it says, 50 minutes, seemed like forever. We were under fire for 4 German guns. We were zigging and zagging, and stopping, starting, and whatever we could do. And we could see the shells exploding on the water. And we picked up shrapnel off the deck afterwards, but they never hit us. So we were
Everything you mentioned is about parachutes. If you look at D-Day, in 4 days around D-Day, there were 50,000 parachutes. So what does the sky look like over the parachutes? Were you close enough to shore to see them coming out of the sky?
I couldn't really see it.
Good to see. Any other questions? That's what's okay. We got a question over here. Any other questions? Got one kind of question.
John, have you been out to Bedford, Virginia, the National D-Day Memorial?
Virginia?
Yeah, the Bedford, where the National D-Day Monument is. Have you visited that? You need to make a trip because there's a whole section about the Navy out there. That's where I first saw Steve Cobb too, 01, at the dedication.
Well, you know Steve.
I've met him a couple of times once I saw his picture. I'm sorry, I'm Kevin. My dad was 29th Division, and Steve was 29th Division.
What city did you say?
It's in Bedford, Virginia.
Bedford.
Questions from the crowd, please. Questions? Okay, this is very unique to get a 98-year-old to tell you the experience of actual D-Day. You're not going to hear this. We're not going to hear this again. Out of 16 million veterans of World War II, there's less than 100,000 left. And we've got his book over here if anybody wants to read it. But he's, I guess that whatever, that journalism course helped you after you read that. I think the journalism course, I still think you're right.
I was born to be a writer, but they ended up being an engineer instead.
I think stand up and applause for this young man.
We do have this book, Lady with the Shamrock, his story while on board the USS Mercy DD-603, and any support from this kind audience will be greatly appreciated by Mr. Cobb. Thank you.